Chapter 4. The Gold Lender's Scales. For 6 long, arduous months, Tarkad followed the first 2 cures for a lean purse with absolute, unwavering faithfulness. Every single time he was paid at the bustling Euphrates harbor, where he spent his days carrying heavy bales of wool, barley, and building stone under a merciless sun that baked the river clay to dust, he did not touch his entire wage. The moment the copper and silver coins were pressed into his sweat-slicked palm by the shouting harbor master, Tarkad immediately took 1/10 of the sum and placed it into a small, sturdy leather bag that hung beneath his tunic, close to his chest. At first, this habit felt like a heavy sacrifice. When the sweet aroma of roasted meats, seasoned with wild cumin and garlic, wafted from the street vendors' carts, his empty stomach would rumble in protest. When he saw other harbor workers spending their evenings drinking the sweet, dark date wine of Babylon and wearing soft, new linen tunics, he felt the sting of his own poverty. His old robe was thin and patched with coarse threads, and his feet were calloused from walking barefoot on the gravel paths. Yet he gritted his teeth and walked past the taverns. He lived on simple barley cakes, wild green onions, and clear water from the public wells. He chose only what was absolutely necessary to keep his strength, ignoring his desires and his pride. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the miracle began to happen. The leather bag grew heavier. It no longer hung flat against his ribs, it took on a round, comforting shape. And when he walked back to his modest room in the evening, the sound of the coins jingling against one another brought him a deep, satisfying sense of peace. He began to realize that the gold and silver he kept was a loyal servant that belonged to him, while the money he spent belonged to others. For the first time in his life, Tarkad had saved a substantial bag of gold. He was no longer a beggar living hand to mouth, he was a man with capital. But with gold came a new and unexpected kind of worry. He had never owned anything of real value before, and the fear of losing it began to haunt his thoughts. He kept the bag hidden beneath a loose brick in the corner of his room, checking on it several times a night to make sure it had not been stolen by thieves or nibbled by rats. One evening, as the shadows of the great temple stretched long across the clay streets, Tarkad's brother-in-law, a young man named Hayden, approached him. Hayden had married Tarkad's sister, a gentle and devoted woman who wanted nothing more than to see her husband succeed. Hayden was always full of grand ideas, talking constantly of schemes that would make him rich overnight, though his pockets were usually empty, and his hands were rarely calloused. Somehow, Hayden had heard rumors of Tarkad's secret savings. "Tarkad," Hayden said, his eyes wide and bright with a feverish excitement as he stepped into Tarkad's small lodging. "I have come to you because a rare, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity has presented itself. A merchant from Damascus has just arrived at the northern gates with a cargo of fine bronze shields. Because he is in a great hurry to return to his own land before the winter rains block the mountain passes, he is selling the entire shipment at a very low price. If we can buy them now, we can hold them for just a month. The king's guards are planning to recruit new soldiers next month, and they will need armor. We can sell the shields to the palace commanders for twice what we paid. It is a certain profit. I only need your bag of gold to secure the purchase, and we will split the gains equally. You will double your wealth in a single moon." Tarkad felt a strong pull in his chest. The thought of doubling his hard-earned gold in a mere 30 days was incredibly intoxicating. It would take him another 6 months of breaking his back at the harbor to save another bag like this one. But with Hayden's plan, it would happen effortlessly. Yet, as he looked at Hayden's flushed, eager face, a cold wind of caution blew through his mind. He remembered Arkad's 4th cure, guard your treasures from loss. He knew that Hayden was a potter by trade, a man who spent his days shaping wet clay on a wheel, not a merchant who knew the ways of weapons and trade routes. Anxious and deeply unsure of what to do, Tarkad decided to seek the counsel of one who knew the secrets of money better than anyone else, Mathan, the gold lender of Babylon. The evening was warm when Tarkad walked down the grand highway of the king. He turned into a narrow side street and entered the shop of Mathan, the dealer in gold, rare jewels, and expensive fabrics. The front of the shop was quiet and filled with the rich smells of cedarwood and dried spices. Colorful rugs hung from the walls, and brass bowls gleamed in the dim light of oil lamps. Glancing neither to the right nor the left at the beautiful things on display, Tarkad passed through the heavy curtain that led to the living quarters at the rear. There he found the sallow-faced Mathan lounging comfortably upon a thick, woven rug. A black slave named Endal was serving him a meal of roasted lamb and dried figs. Mathan looked up, his sallow face breaking into a friendly, knowing smile. "Ah, the young harbor worker," he said. "You look troubled, Tarkad. Have your pockets grown light again? Have you come to borrow a few coppers to buy a meal, or has some clever merchant enticed you to spend what you do not have?" "No, Mathan," Tarkad replied, stepping forward and placing his heavy leather bag on the table. "They have not grown light. In fact, they have grown heavy. For 6 months I have worked and saved. I have followed the cures of Arkad, and this is my first bag of gold. But now that I have it, I am filled with anxiety. I do not know what to do with it, and I crave your wise advice." Mathan's eyebrows rose in surprise. He leaned back on his elbow and gestured to Endal. "Hear that, Endal? This young man comes to the gold lender not to ask for gold, but to ask for advice. Many men come to this room with tears in their eyes, begging for coins to pay for their foolish mistakes. But they never want my advice. Yet, who is more qualified to advise than the one who sees the ruin of fools and the success of the wise every single day? Sit with me, Tarkad," Mathan continued, his voice warm. "You shall be my guest for the evening. Endal, bring a rug for my friend. Bring him a plate of this juicy lamb, some of the barley bread, and fill the large cup with our best wine. He has earned the right to eat at my table." As Tarkad sat and ate, the heavy weight of his anxiety began to lift. When the meal was finished, Mathan reached out and picked up Tarkad's leather bag. He felt its weight, nodding with approval, and then poured the glittering coins onto one of the brass pans of his scales. He carefully placed small, polished stone weights on the other pan until the two sides hung perfectly level in the air. "It is a good, honest start," Mathan said, watching the scales balance. "You have earned the right to hold this treasure. It represents your labor, your self-discipline, and your future. Now tell me what troubles you." Tarkad explained Hayden's proposal in detail. He spoke of the bronze shields, the Damascus merchant, the king's guards, and the promise of doubling his gold in a month. "Hayden is my sister's husband," Tarkad said quietly. "My sister loves him dearly and begs me to help him. She believes this is the opportunity that will make them prosperous. I want to help my family, but I am terrified of losing the gold I worked so hard to save. What should I do?" Mathan leaned back, rubbing his chin, his sallow face turning serious. "You are wise to hesitate, Tarkad. Gold is a strange and slippery thing. It is easy to find ways to spend it, but hard to keep it safe. When a man has gold, many who have none will try to convince him to part with it. Tell me, does Hayden have security? Does he own land, houses, or valuable merchandise that I could seize if the guards do not buy the shields?" "No," Tarkad admitted. "He has no land and no property. He lives in a rented room and has only his wheel and his clay." "And does he know the business of armor?" Mathan asked, his sharp eyes locking onto Tarkad's. "Has he ever bought or sold shields before? Does he know the quality of Damascus bronze, or how to negotiate with the palace commanders?" "No," Tarkad said. "He is a potter. He has only his enthusiasm and his dreams." Mathan pointed a sallow finger at the brass scales on the table. "Look at these scales, Tarkad. They balance only when the weight on both sides is equal. In the world of gold, security is the weight that balances risk. If you lend your gold to a potter to buy shields, there is no balance. The risk is incredibly heavy, and your gold will fall into the abyss of loss. If you desire to help your brother-in-law, you must do so in a way that does not bring his burdens onto your own shoulders. Let me tell you a story that is rarely told over the blacksmith's fires, but contains great wisdom for those who will listen. Once, in a far-off village near Nineveh, there lived a farmer who was blessed by the gods with the ability to understand the language of beasts. Every evening, when the sun went down, he liked to sit in the farmyard and listen to his animals talk. One night, he heard the heavy ox complaining bitterly to the donkey. "My life is full of endless labor," the ox groaned. "From the rising of the sun to its setting, I pull the heavy wooden plow through the deep, sticky mud. My shoulders are raw, my legs are weary, and I am always exhausted. But you, donkey, have a life of pure luxury. You are draped in a beautiful, colorful blanket, and your only job is to carry our master to the market occasionally. Otherwise, you stand here in the shade, eating sweet green grass and resting all day long." Now, the donkey, despite his stubborn nature, was a sympathetic beast and felt sorry for his friend. "My good friend," the donkey said, "you do work far too hard, and I want to help ease your burden. Tomorrow morning, when the slave comes to harness you to the plow, do not stand up. Lay down upon the dirt and bellow loudly, as if you are sick and dying. If you do this, the master will not force you to work, and you can rest in the barn all day." The ox thanked the donkey warmly and followed his advice. The next morning, when the slave came to the barn, the ox lay on the ground and groaned, refusing to move. The slave returned to the farmer and reported that the ox was sick and could not pull the plow. The farmer, who knew exactly what had happened, looked at the slave and said, "If the ox cannot work, the plowing must still go on. Take the donkey, harness him to the plow, and make him do the work today." All that day, the donkey found himself pulling the heavy wooden plow through the rough dirt. His legs trembled with fatigue, his shoulders grew sore where the wood chafed his skin, and he realized how brutal the ox's labor truly was. When he was finally released at sunset and returned to the barn, he was exhausted, bitter, and angry. The ox looked at him with big, grateful eyes. "You are my savior, donkey! Because of your wise advice, I have enjoyed a day of peaceful rest and sweet straw." The donkey glared at him, his ears flattened. "I was a fool," the donkey muttered. "In trying to help you, I ended up pulling your plow. From now on, you can do your own work, or you can starve. I will not carry your burden again." And from that day on, they never spoke to one another, and their friendship was ended. "Can you see the moral of this story, Tarkad?" Mathan asked. "It is a good story," Tarkad replied, "but I want to make sure I understand it fully. The moral is simple," Mathan explained. "If you want to help your friend or your family, do so in a way that does not bring their burdens upon yourself. Do not be like the simple-hearted donkey who ended up pulling the plow because of his desire to be helpful." Tarkad looked at the scales and then at the gold lender. "I see the wisdom in your words. But tell me, Mathan, you lend gold to many people. Do they not repay you? How do you decide who is a safe risk?" Mathan smiled, the sallow skin around his eyes wrinkling. "I would not be a successful lender if I did not get my gold back with its proper rental. The lender must be wise, and he must judge carefully. He must decide whether his gold will perform a useful purpose for the borrower and return to him in safety, or whether it will be wasted by someone who cannot use it wisely. Come, let me show you the secrets of my token chest. It will tell you the stories of the people of Babylon." Mathan reached down and brought out a chest that was as long as his arm. It was covered in red pigskin and decorated with intricate bronze designs of lions and bulls. He placed it on the floor between them and opened the heavy lid. Tarkad leaned forward, his eyes wide. Inside the chest lay many small, strange objects, each wrapped in cloth or resting on velvet. "Whenever I lend to someone, I require a token," Mathan said, picking up a beautiful bronze necklace that lay upon a piece of faded scarlet cloth. "It stays here until the loan is fully paid. If they repay, I return the token. If they fail, the token remains to remind me of my mistake. This bronze necklace and the scarlet cloth will always stay in my chest. They belong to a dear friend of mine, a merchant with whom I traded for many years. He was a wise and honorable man, but he went to the east and brought back a bride. She was a dazzling creature, beautiful but vain, and not like the women of Babylon. She craved luxury, and my friend spent his gold lavishly to satisfy her every whim. When all his wealth was gone, he came to me in great distress. I counseled him, and I lent him gold to rebuild his business. He swore by the great bull that he would repay me. But his wife's demands did not stop. In a bitter quarrel, she dared him to pierce his own heart, and in his despair, he drove a knife into his chest. When she saw what she had done, she was filled with remorse and threw herself into the Euphrates River. The loan was never repaid, and my friend is gone. This token tells me, Tarkad, that humans in the grip of intense, irrational emotions are never safe risks for the gold lender. But look at this, Mathan continued, reaching into the chest and pulling out a simple ring carved from ox bone. This belongs to a poor farmer. A few years ago, the locusts came and devoured all his crops. His family was starving. He came to me, and I lent him a small sum to buy grain. He was an honest man, and as soon as his next harvest came in, he repaid me every copper. Later, he came to me again. A traveler had told him of a breed of goats in a distant northern land that had long, soft hair that could be woven into rugs of extraordinary beauty. The farmer wanted to buy a herd, but had no gold. I trusted his work ethic and his knowledge of animals, so I lent him the gold to make the journey. Today, his herd is growing, and next year, he will bring me the finest rugs in Babylon. I will sell them to the nobles, and soon I will return his ox-bone ring. This loan was safe because it was based on honest labor and practical knowledge. But if people borrow to cover up their own foolishness, you must be extremely cautious. Look at this heavy gold bracelet inset with precious gems. Mathan held up the glittering ornament. The lady who owns this is old, wrinkled, and talks so much that she drives me mad. Once, her family had great wealth, but they lost it through bad investments. She has a son whom she wanted to make into a wealthy merchant. She came to me and borrowed gold so her son could buy a partnership with a caravan owner. But the caravan owner was a rascal. He took the gold, led the boy into a distant city, and then snuck away in the night while the boy was sleeping, leaving him penniless. Now I get no interest on my loan, only endless talk and complaints from the mother. The bracelet is valuable enough to cover the debt, but the loan itself was a failure. The mother's romantic dreams for her son blinded her to the risk. Now this piece of rough packing rope, Mathan said, holding up a small knot of hemp, belongs to Nebader, the camel trader. Whenever Nebader needs to buy a new herd of camels, he brings me this knot, and I lend him whatever he needs. He is a wise, experienced trader who knows the value of every beast in the desert. I trust his judgment completely. Honorable merchants like Nebader are the lifeblood of Babylon. It profits me to help them, because their success keeps the city prosperous. But look at this Egyptian turquoise beetle. Mathan tossed the carved stone onto the floor with a look of disdain. The young man who owns this does not care if I ever get my gold back. When I asked him for payment, he simply whines that bad luck pursues him. The token actually belongs to his father, an honorable farmer of small means who pledged his own land and his herd to support his son's wild ideas. The young man wanted to get rich quickly, and his business collapsed because he had no experience. Youth is ambitious, Tarkad. Youth always wants to take shortcuts to wealth and the luxury that comes with it. But youth does not understand that hopeless debt is like a deep, dark pit. You can fall into it in a single day, but you will struggle for years to climb out. It is a pit of sorrow and regret, where the sun does not shine and your nights are filled with sleepless torment. Yet I do not discourage borrowing. Borrowing is good if it is for a wise, productive purpose. I made my own fortune using borrowed gold. But it must be done with caution. Mathan looked at Tarkad, his expression soft but firm. If Hayden came to me asking to borrow 50 pieces of gold, I would ask him what he plans to do with it. If he told me he wanted to buy bronze shields, I would ask him what he knows about the armor trade. He knows nothing. His ambition is noble, but it is not practical. I would tell him no. Tell me, Tarkad, how many months did it take you to save this bag of gold? 6 months of hard labor at the harbor. Tarkad replied, looking at the brass scales. And during those months, did you deny yourself the things your heart desired? Yes, every single day. I wore patched robes and ate only barley and onions. Then it took half a year of your life's labor to save this treasure. Mathan said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Do you think your sister would want you to risk half a year of your life, all your sweat and self-denial, just so her husband could experiment with a trade he knows nothing about? No, Tarkat admitted. If I explained it to her in those words, she would not want me to risk it. Then go to them, Mathan advised. Say to Hayden, I have labored for 6 months, denying myself food and comfort to save this bag of gold. I want to see you succeed, Hayden. If you will bring me a detailed plan that my wise friend Mathan approves, a plan where the risk is small and the profit is certain, I will gladly lend you a portion of my savings. But I will not risk the entire savings of my labor on an untested dream. Do this, Tarkat. If Hayden has the soul of a true merchant, he will find a way to start small and prove he can succeed. If he fails with a small amount, he will not owe you more than he can hope to repay, and your treasure will still be safe. Keep your gold, Tarkat. Do not let it leave your pouch unless you have a safe way to pull it back again. Remember what I have carved beneath the lid of my token box. Tarkat looked down at the carved wood. In bold, deep letters, the words read, Better a little caution than a great regret. Tarkat reached out and took his leather bag of gold from the table. The intoxicating desire for quick wealth had faded, replaced by the clear, cool light of wisdom. He felt a deep sense of relief. You are right, Mathan, Tarkat said, slipping the bag back beneath his tunic. I will not lend the gold to Hayden for this shield's deal. I will keep my savings safe, and I will only invest them when I am certain the principal is secure. You speak like a true merchant, Mathan said, clapping him on the shoulder as Andal filled their cups once more. Keep your gold safe, and let it work for you slowly and surely. It is far better to earn a small, safe return than to lose your entire treasure in a gamble. Tarkat thanked the wise lender and walked out into the cool Babylonian night. He held his purse tightly, his heart at peace, knowing that he had saved himself from pulling another man's plow. Chapter 6. The 5 Laws of Gold. A bag heavy with gold or a clay tablet carved with words of wisdom. If you had your choice, which would you choose? By the flickering light from the fire of desert shrubs, the suntanned faces of the caravan packers gleamed with interest. The caravan had halted for the night at a rocky canyon near the Syrian border, the cool desert wind rustling the canvas of the tents. Nearby, the camel herds sprawled in the sand, some chewing their cuds contentedly, others snoring in hoarse discord. Beside the tents were neatly stacked bales of merchandise covered with skins. The gold, chorused the 27 packers, their eyes bright in the firelight. Dabasir, the old camel trader, smiled knowingly. He drew his white robe close about his lean legs, for a cool night wind was blowing. He looked at Tarkat, who sat quietly by his side, holding the heavy clay tablet wrapped in blue silk. Hark! Dabasir resumed, raising his hand. Hear the wild dogs out there in the night. They howl and wail because they are lean with hunger. Yet feed them, and what do they? Fight and strut. Then fight and strut some more, giving no thought to the morrow that will surely come. Just so it is with the sons of men. Give them a choice of gold and wisdom, what do? Ignore the wisdom and waste the gold. On the morrow they wail because they have no more gold. Gold is reserved for those who know its laws and abide by them. Because you have served me faithfully upon our long journey, Tarkat, because you cared well for my camels, because you toiled uncomplainingly across the hot sands of the desert, because you fought bravely the robbers that sought to despoil my merchandise, I will tell you this night the tale of the 5 laws of gold, such a tale as you never hast heard before. Hark you, with deep attention to the words I speak, for if you grasp their meaning and heed them, in the days that come you will have much gold. He paused impressively. Above in a canopy of blue, the stars shone brightly in the crystal-clear skies of Babylonia. You have told us many good tales, Dabasir, spoke up the chief packer. We look to your wisdom to guide us upon the morrow when our service with you shall be at an end. I have but told you of my adventures in strange and distant lands, Dabasir replied. But this night I shall tell you of the wisdom of Arkad, the wise rich man, as it was told to me by Nomaser, his son, many years ago in Nineveh, when I was but a lad. My master and myself had tarried long into the night in the palace of Nomacer. I had helped my master bring great bundles of fine rugs, each one to be tried by Nomacer until his choice of colors was satisfied. At last he was well pleased and commanded us to sit with him and to drink a rare vintage odorous to the nostrils and most warming to my stomach, which was unaccustomed to such a drink. Then did he tell us this tale of the great wisdom of Arkad, his father, even as I shall tell it to you. In Babylon it is the custom, as you know, that the sons of wealthy fathers live with their parents in expectation of inheriting the estate. Arkad did not approve of this custom. Therefore, when Nomacer reached man's estate, he sent for the young man and addressed him. My son, it is my desire that you succeed to my estate. You must, however, first prove that you are capable of wisely handling it. Therefore, I wish that you go out into the world and show your ability both to acquire gold and to make thyself respected among men. To start you well, I will give you 2 things of which I, myself, was denied when I started as a poor youth to build up a fortune. First, I give you this bag of gold. If you use it wisely, it will be the basis of your future success. Second, I give you this clay tablet upon which is carved the 5 laws of gold. If you do but interpret them in your own acts, they shall bring you competence and security. 10 years from this day come you back to the house of your father, and give account of thyself. If you prove worthy, I will then make you the heir to my estate. Otherwise, I will give it to the priests that they may barter for my soul the land consideration of the gods. So Nomacer went forth to make his own way, taking his bag of gold, the clay tablet carefully wrapped in silken cloth, his slave and the horses upon which they rode. The 10 years passed, and Nomacer, as he had agreed, returned to the house of his father, who provided a great feast in his honor, to which he invited many friends and relatives. After the feast was over, the father and mother mounted their throne-like seats at one side of the great hall, and Nomacer stood before them to give an account of himself as he had promised his father. It was evening. The room was hazy with smoke from the wicks of the oil lamps that but dimly lighted it. Slaves in white woven jackets and tunics fanned the humid air rhythmically with long-stemmed palm leaves. A stately dignity colored the scene. The wife of Nomacer and his 2 young sons, with friends and other members of the family, sat upon rugs behind him, eager listeners. My father, he began deferentially, I bow before your wisdom. 10 years ago, when I stood at the gates of manhood, you bade me go forth and become a man among men, instead of remaining a vassal to your fortune. You gave me liberally of your gold. You gave me liberally of your wisdom. Of the gold, alas! I must admit of a disastrous handling. It fled, indeed, from my inexperienced hands even as a wild hare flees at the first opportunity from the youth who captures it. The father smiled indulgently. Continue, my son, your tale interests me in all its details. I decided to go to Nineveh, as it was a growing city, believing that I might find there opportunities. I joined a caravan, and among its members made numerous friends. 2 well-spoken men who had a most beautiful white horse as fleet as the wind were among these. As we journeyed, they told me in confidence that in Nineveh was a wealthy man who owned a horse so swift that it had never been beaten. Its owner believed that no horse living could run with greater speed. Therefore, would he wager any sum however large that his horse could outspeed any horse in all Babylonia. Compared to their horse, so my friends said, it was but a lumbering ass that could be beaten with ease. They offered, as a great favor, to permit me to join them in a wager. I was quite carried away with the plan. Our horse was badly beaten and I lost much of my gold. The father laughed. Later, I discovered that this was a deceitful plan of these men, and they constantly journeyed with caravans seeking victims. You see, the man in Nineveh was their partner, and shared with them the bets he won. This shrewd deceit taught me my first lesson in looking out for myself. I was soon to learn another, equally bitter. In the caravan was another young man with whom I became quite friendly. He was the son of wealthy parents, and, like myself, journeying to Nineveh to find a suitable location. Not long after our arrival, he told me that a merchant had died and his shop with its rich merchandise and patronage could be secured at a paltry price. Saying that we would be equal partners, but first he must return to Babylon to secure his gold, he prevailed upon me to purchase the stock with my gold, agreeing that his would be used later to carry on our venture. He long delayed the trip to Babylon, proving in the meantime to be an unwise buyer and a foolish spender. I finally put him out, but not before the business had deteriorated to where we had only unsaleable goods and no gold to buy other goods. I sacrificed what was left to an Israelite for a pitiful sum. Soon there followed, I tell you, my father, bitter days. I sought employment and found it not, for I was without trade or training that would enable me to earn. I sold my horses. I sold my slave. I sold my extra robes that I might have food and a place to sleep, but each day grim want crouched closer. But in those bitter days, I remembered your confidence in me, my father. You had sent me forth to become a man, and this I was determined to accomplish. The mother buried her face and wept softly. At this time, I bethought me of the tablet you had given to me upon which you had carved the 5 laws of gold. Thereupon, I read most carefully your words of wisdom, and realized that had I but sought wisdom first, my gold would not have been lost to me. I learned by heart each law and determined that, when once more the goddess of good fortune smiled upon me, I would be guided by the wisdom of age and not by the inexperience of youth. For the benefit of you who are seated here this night, I will read the wisdom of my father as engraved upon the clay tablet which he gave to me 10 years ago. The 5 laws of gold. Gold comes gladly and in increasing quantity to any man who will put by not less than 1/10 of his earnings to create an estate for his future, and that of his family. 2. Gold labors diligently and contentedly for the wise owner who finds for it profitable employment, multiplying even as the flocks of the field. 3. Gold clingeth to the protection of the cautious owner who invests it under the advice of men wise in its handling. 4. Gold slippeth away from the man who invests it in businesses or purposes with which he is not familiar or which are not approved by those skilled in its keep. Gold flees the man who would force it to impossible earnings or who followeth the alluring advice of tricksters and schemers or who trusts it to his own inexperience and romantic desires in investment. These are the 5 laws of gold as written by my father. I do proclaim them as of greater value than gold itself, as I will show by the continuance of my tale. He again faced his father. I have told you of the depth of poverty and despair to which my inexperience brought me. However, there is no chain of disasters that will not come to an end. Mine came when I secured employment managing a crew of slaves working upon the new outer wall of the city. Profiting from my knowledge of the first law of gold, I saved a copper from my first earnings, adding to it at every opportunity until I had a piece of silver. It was a slow procedure, for one must live. I did spend grudgingly, I admit, because I was determined to earn back before the 10 years were over as much gold as you, my father, had given to me. One day the slave master, with whom I had become quite friendly, said to me, "You are a thrifty youth who spends not wantonly what he earns. Hast you gold put by that as not earning?" "Yes," I replied. "It is my greatest desire to accumulate gold to replace that which my father gave to me and which I have lost. 'Tis a worthy ambition, I will grant, and do you know that the gold which you have saved can work for you and earn much more gold? Alas! My experience has been bitter, for my father's gold has fled from me, and I am in much fear lest my own do the same. If you have confidence in me, I will give you a lesson in the profitable handling of gold," he replied. "Within a year the outer wall will be complete and ready for the great gates of bronze that will be built at each entrance to protect the city from the king's enemies. In all Nineveh there is not enough metal to make these gates, and the king has not thought to provide it. Here is my plan. A group of us will pool our gold and send a caravan to the mines of copper and tin, which are distant, and bring to Nineveh the metal for the gates. When the king says, 'Make the great gates,' we alone can supply the metal and a rich price he will pay. If the king will not buy from us, we will yet have the metal which can be sold for a fair price." In his offer I recognized an opportunity to abide by the 3rd law and invest my savings under the guidance of wise men. Nor was I disappointed. Our pool was a success, and my small store of gold was greatly increased by the transaction. In due time, I was accepted as a member of this same group in other ventures. They were men wise in the profitable handling of gold. They talked over each plan presented with great care, before entering upon it. They would take no chance on losing their principal or tying it up in unprofitable investments from which their gold could not be recovered. Such foolish things as the horse race and the partnership into which I had entered with my inexperience would have had scant consideration with them. They would have immediately pointed out their weaknesses. Through my association with these men, I learned to safely invest gold to bring profitable returns. As the years went on, my treasure increased more and more rapidly. I not only made back as much as I lost, but much more. Through my misfortunes, my trials and my success, I have tested time and again the wisdom of the 5 laws of gold, my father, and have proven them true in every test. To him who is without knowledge of the 5 laws, gold comes not often, and goeth away quickly. But to him who abides by the 5 laws, gold comes and works as his dutiful slave. No macer ceased speaking and motioned to a slave in the back of the room. The slave brought forward, one at a time, 3 heavy leather bags. One of these no macer took and placed upon the floor before his father, addressing him again. You did give to me a bag of gold, Babylon gold. Behold, in its place, I do return to you a bag of Nineveh gold of equal weight. An equal exchange, as all will agree. You did give to me a clay tablet inscribed with wisdom. Behold, in its stead I do return 2 bags of gold. So saying, he took from the slave the other 2 bags and, likewise, placed them upon the floor before his father. This I do to prove to you, my father, of how much greater value I consider your wisdom than your gold. Yet, who can measure in bags of gold the value of wisdom? Without wisdom, gold is quickly lost by those who have it, but with wisdom, gold can be secured by those who have it not, as these 3 bags of gold do prove. It does, indeed, give to me the deepest satisfaction, my father, to stand before you and say that, because of your wisdom, I have been able to become rich and respected before men. The father placed his hand fondly upon the head of no macer. You have learned well your lessons, and I am, indeed, fortunate to have a son to whom I may entrust my wealth. Dabasser ceased his tale and looked critically at his listeners. What means this to you, this tale of no macer? He continued. Who amongst you can go to your father or to the father of your wife and give an account of wise handling of his earnings? What would these venerable men think were you to say, I have traveled much and learned much and labored much and earned much, yet alas, of gold I have little. Some I spent wisely, some I spent foolishly, and much I lost in unwise ways. Dost still think it but an inconsistency of fate that some men have much gold and others have not? Then you err. Men have much gold when they know the 5 laws of gold and abide thereby. Because I learned these 5 laws in my youth and abided by them, I have become a wealthy merchant. Not by some strange magic did I accumulate my wealth. Wealth that comes quickly goeth the same way. Wealth that stayeth to give enjoyment and satisfaction to its owner comes gradually, because it is a child born of knowledge and persistent purpose. To earn wealth is but a slight burden upon the thoughtful man. Bearing the burden consistently from year to year accomplishes the final purpose. The 5 laws of gold offer to you a rich reward for their observance. I do know them each by heart because in my youth, I could see their value and would not be content until I knew them word for word. The first law of gold. Gold comes gladly and in increasing quantity to any man who will put by not less than 1/10 of his earnings to create an estate for his future, and that of his family. The second law of gold. Gold labors diligently and contentedly for the wise owner who finds for it profitable employment, multiplying even as the flocks of the field. The third law of gold. Gold clingeth to the protection of the cautious owner who invests it under the advice of men wise in its handling. The fourth law of gold. Gold slippeth away from the man who invests it in businesses or purposes with which he is not familiar or which are not approved by those skilled in its keep. The fifth law of gold. Gold flees the man who would force it to impossible earnings or who followeth the alluring advice of tricksters and schemers or who trusts it to his own inexperience and romantic desires in investment. These are the 5 laws of gold as written by Arkad, and passed to no macer. Tomorrow, we enter Babylon. Look! See the fire that burns eternal above the temple of Bel. We are already in sight of the golden city. Tomorrow, each of you shall have gold, the gold you have so well earned by your faithful services. 10 years from this night, what can you tell about this gold? If there be men among you, who, like Nomacer, will use a portion of their gold to start for themselves an estate and be thenceforth wisely guided by the wisdom of Arcad, 10 years from now, 'tis a safe wager they will be rich and respected among men. Our wise acts accompany us through life to please us and to help us. Just as surely, our unwise acts follow us to plague and torment us. Alas, they cannot be forgotten. In the front rank of the torments that do follow us are the memories of the things we should have done, of the opportunities which came to us, and we took not. Rich are the treasures of Babylon, so rich no man can count their value in pieces of gold. Each year, they grow richer and more valuable. Like the treasures of every land, they are a rich reward awaiting those men of purpose who determine to secure their just share. In the strength of your own desires is a magic power. Guide this power with your knowledge of the 5 laws of gold, and you shall share the treasures of Babylon. Tarkad wrapped the tablet back in the blue silk, his heart full of determination. He looked out into the desert night, no longer afraid of the road ahead, for he carried the legacy of the richest man in Babylon.